guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you about the 9 books I read in July. The first book I read was The One That Got Away with Murder, and I rated this one 4 stars. I loved reading the mystery of the book, and the first few pages drew me in. I really liked all the red herrings along the way that the author provided. There were also too many characters for me to keep track of sometimes, and some of them blended together for me. I also guessed who the person was like 3/4 into the book, and then a person who killed someone else didn't really make sense to me and just kind of confused me. The second book I read was 1,000 Ships, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. So this story is the woman's perspective of the Trojan War from both sides, from Penelope's, from just random Trojan women, Cassandra, Calliope, and more. I really liked reading all these different perspectives. I especially loved how unhinged Penelope's got, as Odysseus kept taking more and more time to get home, which wasn't his fault some of the time. Some of the time it was his fault, but I just loved how unhinged her letters got as time went on, and he still hadn't come home yet. I wish that the story was told chronologically instead of all over the place, because there were a couple times where I'm like, wait, when is this supposed to be taking place? So I wished that we got the perspective starting from like before or starting of the war, and then the perspectives ended when the war ended or afterwards instead of all over the place. But other than that, I really enjoyed the book. After that, I read Spin, and I rated that one 5 stars, and it's a retelling of Arachne's story. I really like that it was told in verse, so it was a really fast read for me. I love reading her story and then seeing the impact she had on people and the impact they had on her. I liked Athena at the end of the story, especially when she turns Arachne into a spider, and then the tone that she uses at the end of the story. I like how it's kind of ambiguous, especially with what happened beforehand. So it's like, okay, she's doing this on purpose, or is she granting like a small mercy? So I did really like that. I would own this book because I really liked it that much, and I would reread it like over and over and over again. The fourth book that I read was called Everyone Is Watching, and I rated that one 4 stars. It's a reality show mixed with Survivor, and I really enjoyed reading this book. I liked reading all the different perspectives, especially the female protagonist. I really wish we got some of the male characters' perspectives as well, but from the female protagonist chapters and their perspectives, I really enjoyed it. I liked the chapters when we got the audience's perspectives of what was going on. I didn't see the twists coming that we got, and I wish we got to see how the game ended instead of the ending that we got. The prologue and how that scene actually happens didn't match out for me. And yes, they're told from 2 different perspectives, and perspectives change. But words are dialogue, but you know what I mean, and actions didn't match up to me, and it just didn't work for me. The next book I read after that was called Bless Your Heart, and I rated this one 3 stars. It's about 4 generations of women who keep the dead from rising in their small town. It's a cute idea, but it really didn't work for me. There were too many characters to keep track of, and too many POVs of said chapters. Of said characters. The backstory there's a big thing that they allude to in the book. And then when they actually tell us what happens, it just felt very rushed to me. It was like a paragraph long, and I'm like, that's not worth all this hype for it. And then the whodunit of it all just came out of nowhere. They get mentioned like a couple of times, and then at the end they're like, it's this person, and it's just like, it didn't really work for me. Yeah, the person was only mentioned a couple of times, and it's like, it's this person, and I'm like, I guess. Overall, it was like an okay read. I wouldn't want to read more books after this. I don't really want to continue the series after that. The next book I read after was called Darling Girls, and I rated this one 5 stars. It's about 3 foster sisters who are brought back to their childhood foster home after a body is discovered there years later. I read and finished this book in less than a day because it was so good. I really loved the characters, and I liked getting all their different perspectives. Some moments did make me laugh, and then the plot was intriguing and kept me guessing, and I was hooked after the first chapter. I would own this book, and I would reread this book because it drew me in so much. I really, really love this book. The 7th book that I read was called The House That Horror Built, and I rated that one 3 stars. A woman gets a housekeeping job at a recluse director's house, whose house actually may or may not be haunted, and weird stuff starts happening. The main character's name is Harry, and it took me out multiple times because they were in the book to be like Harry and blah blah, and I'd be thinking, wait, I was so confused because usually Harry is associated with the male's name, and it was just really weird for the female character, her name to be Harry, and it just took me out multiple times. Yeah, and it was hard to keep track, especially with the other male characters. Some chapters felt like they dragged on or were very long. I liked that it took place in Chicago, and then there were also many mentions about the story taking place during the pandemic, and I'm like, okay, I get it. The review was in the last 30 pages, and then the book ended abruptly, which I hate. I hate when a book or a movie ends abruptly. I like the background characters. A possession happens in the last 30 pages, which I feel like the author forgot that they were kind of leading up to it, and then they're like, oh frick, let me put this possession in because I forgot about it, and it just felt like it came out of nowhere, and it didn't really work for me because of how the story was written. You're like, okay, it's not really this, and then it's like, JK, it is this, but then it doesn't really work. It just felt weird and out of place in the story, especially with everything else seeming to take place like it's not a possession, and then it's like, JK, it is, and it just seems wild and out of place. The 8th book that I read was called House of Hollow, and I rated this one 4 stars. 3 sisters disappeared when they were younger but came back stranger when they returned, and then years later one of the older sisters disappears again, and the other 2 have to rescue her and face what happened to them before. Good characters and great imagery. I really liked the imagery in this book, especially of the halfway. Plot was intriguing and kept me engaged. Some of the twists were predictable, but I did enjoy them. This world that they created is something I would want to learn more about because it intrigued me so much, especially with the imagery, and how they come across it and how it's described. It just drew me in, and I would want to learn more about this world and what happened to it, how it got created. It was just so fascinating. The only thing I didn't like about it was the epilogue was kind of weird, especially with what it was leading to. And it's like, we kind of figured that this problem is solved. Why are we going back to face this problem when the problem is already solved, or this issue is already solved? It just felt very weird. Like, I think it was trying to lead to a sequel, but I don't know. I thought how the original issue got solved was a good way for that person, and then for them to be like, okay, we need to go back, and it's like, no, you don't need to go back. The issue already got solved. And then the last book I read in July, which is my 9th one, is called A Long, Long Sleep. I rated this one 5 stars. And it's a futuristic retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but it focuses more on what happened to her after she wakes up than before in what we get in most retellings. I really liked the love story between Xavier and Rosalinda, even though it felt icky at times, especially with the backstory of what happened to Rosalinda and how she met Xavier and how her relationship started with Xavier. It does feel icky at times, but I do understand. I do really like the love story, even though it feels gross. There were good twists and turns that kept me guessing. Good world building of what this world looks like, how the future looks like, and how it got there. It's funny because like this book was written in 2011, and there's like mentions of a pandemic or like plagues happening, and I'm like, huh, that's really funny that this book from almost 13 years ago mentioned stuff like that happening. And it was just so funny to read that, and like when I read that I had to look to see what year the book came out, and it's like, wow, this book kind of semi predicted the future. I would read this book again because I really liked it. I don't know if I would read the sequel, but I liked this first book. So those were my 9 reads of July. I was really busy this month, so that's why I wasn't able to read as much as I had in previous months. If you have any recommendations for future books you want me to read, or have any comments, put them down below. If not, I'll see you next month. Bye!